Hey, Dr. T here. Today we're going to be looking at some myths that seem to come with domestic violence. There are many myths around domestic violence and its causes. And here are some of the most widely believed and deep-rooted misconceptions. This research comes from Women's Aid that provides services to DV victims across England. Myth number 1. If it was bad, she'd leave. In reality, it can be very difficult for a woman to leave an abusive partner even if she wants to. Like any other relationship, one that ends in abuse began with falling in love and being in love. A woman may still be in love with her partner and believe him when he says he's sorry and it won't happen again. She may be frightened for her life or for the safety of her children if she leaves. She may have nowhere to go. She may have no financial independence. And women in abusive relationships need support and understanding, not judgment. Myth number 2. Domestic violence always involves physical violence. In reality, domestic abuse does not always include physical violence. Domestic abuse can be incidents or patterns of incidences of controlling, coercive, threatening, degrading, or violent behavior, including sexual violence, by a partner or ex-partner. Myth number 3. Alcohol and drugs make men more violent. In reality, alcohol and drugs can make existing abuse worse, or may be a catalyst for an attack, but they do not cause domestic abuse. Many people use alcohol or drugs and do not abuse their partners, so it should never be used to excuse violent or controlling behavior. The perpetrator alone is responsible for his actions. Myth number 4. He can be a good father even if he abuses his partner. The parents' relationship does not have to affect the children. In reality, an estimated 90% of children whose mothers are abused witness the abuse. The effects are traumatic and long-lasting. When a child witnesses domestic abuse, this is child abuse. Between 40 and 70% of these children are also direct victims of the abuse which is happening in the home. Myth number 5. She provoked him. In reality, the myth is dangerous because any reference to provocation means that we are blaming the women and relieving the abuser of responsibility for his actions. Abuse or violence of any kind is never the victim's fault. Responsibility always lies with the perpetrator and with him alone. Myth number 6. Domestic violence is a private family matter and not a social issue. In reality, violence and abuse against women and children incur high costs for society. Hospital treatment, medication, court proceedings, lawyers' fees, imprisonment, not to mention the psychological and physical impact on those who experience it. Survivors' voices should be heard. When we describe domestic violence as a private family matter, we minimize, condone, and permit it. Myth number 7. Women often lie about abuse. In reality, false allegations about domestic abuse are rare. This myth is extremely damaging because the fear of being called a liar can and does deter women from reporting the abuse they have experienced. It is worth noting that perpetrators sometimes present themselves as victims, either because they see themselves as victims or because they are seeking to maintain power and control over their victim. It is therefore important that professionals working with both the victims and the perpetrators fully understand the dynamics of domestic abuse. Myth number 8. Men who abuse women are mentally unwell. In reality, there is no research that supports this myth. Abuse and violence are a choice, and there is no excuse for them. Domestic abuse happens throughout every level of society, regardless of health, wealth, or status. Myth number 9. Women are attracted to abusive men. In reality, domestic abuse is prevalent throughout society, and it is not uncommon for women to experience abuse in more than one relationship. To suggest that some women are particularly attracted to abusive men is victim blaming. A perpetrator of domestic abuse can be charming and charismatic when he first meets his new partner, and often no one, let alone the woman he just met, would suspect he would ever be abusive in a relationship. Myth number 10. Domestic abuse isn't that common. Through my research, I found that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men have experienced domestic violence in their lifetime. See my previous video that I just did on statistics. Myth number 11. Domestic violence or domestic abuse is a crime of passion, a momentary loss of control. In reality, domestic abuse is rarely about losing control, but taking control. Perpetrators rarely act spontaneously when angry. They consciously choose when to abuse their partner, when they are alone, and when there are no witnesses. If there are witnesses, they usually are just children. They have control over whom they abuse. And myth number 12. All couples argue. It is not domestic abuse, it's just a normal relationship. In reality, abuse and disagreement are not the same thing. Different opinions are normal and completely acceptable in healthy relationships. Abuse is not a disagreement. It is the use of physical, sexual, emotional, or psychological violence or threats in order to govern and control another person's thinking, opinions, emotions, and behavior. If you or someone you know is in an abusive situation, call the National Helpline at 1-800-799-SAFE or text START to 88788. Everyone deserves a healthy relationship.